Hello, Booktopians. I'm Sarah McDorling, and I am delighted to be speaking today with Liane Moriarty, beloved and best-selling author of many books, including Big Little Lies, Nine Little Strangers, and the soon-to-be-published Apples Never Fall. Liane, welcome.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's lovely to be here.
I'm really excited to chat with you. I'm lucky enough to have read Apples Never Fall. I will tread really carefully so that we avoid spoilers.
Thank you.
To that end, for the people who haven't been lucky enough to read this yet, as it's not out, can you tell a little bit about what they can expect in Apples Never Fall?
So it's the story of Joy and Stan Delaney, who are retired tennis coaches, and what happens when Joy goes missing and Stan is the chief suspect in her possible murder, and her 4 adult children have to deal with the terrible possibility that their father may have murdered their mother. And it's about sibling rivalry and relationships and betrayal and deceit and tennis.
Where would you say the first little spark for this story came from?
I've got a really long answer, sorry, to that question, because there are actually a few little sparks. So I'll start with the year of joy, which was what I was calling 2019. Fortunately, not 2020. So I had decided, last time I saw you, I may even have mentioned it, I'm not sure, that after I finished 9 Perfect Strangers, I was saying I'm going to have a year off and I'm going to call it the year of joy. It was a highly self-indulgent idea because it was meant to be a year all about me and my joy, and that it was just that I'd been having a book out every second year, and I decided I was going to ask for longer. So it was going to be, this book's 3 years since my last book, and I decided in that year that I would read poetry and listen to music, and I had visions of myself, just doing everything for finding out if I had a soul. But then I did want to write. I just didn't want to start a new novel. And so I asked my sister Jackie, who is the author, as you know, is the author Liane Moriarty, to send me some writing prompts. And she actually sent me a prompt, just a 3-line text, and it described a bike lying on the grass underneath a tree with some apples lying next to the bike. And as you would know, that actually became the opening scene of the book. So instead of writing, I was meant to write a little piece from it, I just immediately started writing a novel. So in a way, it was lovely that I did discover in this year of joy that what does bring me joy is writing novels. So that was the one spark. The second spark is that, like Joy, my husband also gave me some fancy headphones. And so I got into podcasts. I got into podcasts a little bit late. And like most people, I started with a number of true crime podcasts. So I'm sure that's what then sparked this idea of the missing mother. And the third spark was an article I read about an elderly couple who, late at night, a young woman knocked on their door and said she needed help, and they let her in and let her stay the night. And there was a resulting criminal case which had nothing to do with what I then wrote for Apples Never Fall. But again, that was a little spark. So I knew I had a missing mother. I knew somebody had knocked on the door late at night. I had no idea how. And I had no idea how the bike and the apples all came together, and then those 3 sparks came together to form the book.
And from that, we got this amazing novel, which I read pretty much in one go. I couldn't put it down. And I read it in a high state of, anxiety is the wrong word because it makes it sound bad, just like complete curiosity to figure out not only, who had done the thing, but what the thing was. And I wondered, how was that for you, writing not just like a whodunit, but a what happened at the same time?
Yes, well, it's like all my books, I definitely didn't plan it, so I had no idea. So Joy Delaney has gone missing. I didn't know where she was. I didn't know what had happened to her. I didn't know how that tied together with this young woman, so her name's Savannah, who knocks on the door. I didn't know how that came together. So that anxiety that you describe, I also have as the writer. So I always say that it's a fun way to write, not planning, because I sit down at my desk and I think, I wonder what's going to happen today. But it's also a scary way to write because I sit down and I think, I hope something's going to happen today. So yeah, it's exciting, wondering, and I'm just working it out as I go along.
It fascinates me because it's so intricate and comes together so well in this like grand conclusion. It amazes me that you didn't have it all planned out before you start writing.
No, and I honestly don't, but I also always want to make it clear, especially to writers who might be listening, that doesn't mean that it just all falls perfectly into place as I write. It's just that as I'm writing, I prefer just to write a scene. So I have Joy and Stan there just late at night, and through writing, I'm thinking about them, and I'm waiting for the knock on the door. And so then as I'm writing, I'm thinking, so what could it be? And so I always have a separate document called Things I Need to Fix. So as I work it out, then I know I'm going to have to go back and put in signposts certain things. I'm going to need to change things because now I know how it's going to end. Certain things will no longer work. So Stan, for example, he refuses to use mobile phones. But that's something that I came to late. So early on in the book, he does use he's sitting there in bed reading his phone. So you've got to go back and change certain things along the way. And some things in this book especially, I wrote just as part of background for a character. And then I didn't realize until later that I could make them become significant. So I love it when that happens because then it feels like it's happened organically. And you don't have to then go back and sort of shove a jigsaw piece into your story. But it's definitely, I always feel envious if I hear authors who say, and I just sat there and it all just poured through me. It doesn't really happen like that. There are magical moments where it's the characters start talking and the writing's going well and you get into that zone, but it definitely doesn't just pour out of me.
Turns out writing is, hard work.
Yes, there are the days when it's really hard work. So especially in the beginning, there's a lot of flailing about and thinking, I don't know these characters, I don't understand, I don't know how this is all going to come together. But as I say, there are wonderful moments along the way.
Well, as with most people at the top of their game, you make a thing that is quite difficult look effortless, which kind of dovetails into my next question, which is that the Delaney family could have been musical prodigies, or they might have been golfers. What drew you to make them tennis players in particular?
Yes, they could have been, you're right, they could have been any of those things. So I definitely did not set out to write a book about tennis. I had that premise, and I probably started writing those early chapters before I knew exactly who they were, except that I knew I wanted them to have a family business, really just so that I didn't have to send them off to work each day. So it's always, you're just trying to keep your characters in one place. So, with 9 Perfect Strangers, where I have them in a resort, it's so convenient that they're all there. So I remember thinking I'll have them running a family business. And I was actually having a tennis lesson because my son is becoming quite a good tennis player, not like the Delaney children. I'm not expecting to be at Wimbledon one day, but I was having a lesson trying to just get myself good enough to play against him because he can beat me now. And I thought to myself, I know I'll make the Delaney's tennis coaches. And so I had that in my mind, but then it's funny, then I start to think about it, and then I thought, oh no, I guess if they're tennis coaches, they're really into tennis, obviously. So I'm now going to have to learn about tennis, and I guess if they're into tennis, maybe they used to play, maybe they wanted their children to be tennis players, and so then as a result of that, all sorts of storylines then came out of the tennis theme. And also because then I started talking to tennis coaches and to my own tennis coach and to former tennis players, and then things that they say then sparked other storylines. So then, especially the competitive players, I just got a new understanding of the level of sacrifice that goes into tennis and how and just maybe start to think about what happens if you have the talent and you have the dedication and then you don't make it, which obviously is for the vast majority of all these really talented players. So that again became a really important part of the book.
I wanted to ask, have you felt as a writer any kind of extra pressure or any differences now post the huge popularity of Big Little Lies and now also Nine Perfect Strangers? Has it sort of changed the way you write, or is it had an effect in some way?
It definitely hasn't changed the way I write. I know I'm writing as I've always written, but having said that, I know people don't believe me. I know. Anyway, and also I will fact check myself in that with Nine Perfect Strangers, when I was writing that book, because we were working on season 2 of Big Little Lies at the time. And so I do remember thinking, and so the producers of Big Little Lies were saying, so what are you writing about? And in the same way that I would with anybody, I was asking them about, have you ever been to a health resort? So whatever I'm writing about, I'm always asking the people around me, trying to get material. So, you know, if I was still writing Apples Never Fall now, I'd be saying, are you a tennis player? And I did it automatically with a podcast I did recently where she said she played competitive tennis, and I felt that involuntary desire to say, tell me, give me your material. So I knew that the producers of Big Little Lies were interested in what I was writing, and I remember thinking to myself, so for Nicole Kidman, I remember thinking, well, as of now, there is no role for you. But then I had, so I had the original director of Tranquillum House was a short, bald man called Gregory. But I knew I had to use a character's name. So Maria, I can't pronounce it properly, Demchenko, otherwise known as Masha. And I knew I had to use her name for a character in my book. So I remember thinking, actually, I'll change this Gregory to this wonderful Russian name. And so this character becomes suddenly a charismatic, tall Russian. And then I do remember thinking to myself, oh, there you are, Nicole,
Wow.
There is a role for you. So to fact check myself and thinking that I never write for television, that I did think, okay, you could play this role. But I definitely didn't change the way otherwise that I wrote. So for example, in Nine Perfect Strangers, you know, the part of that retreat is a silent retreat. So if I was writing for television, I obviously would not have pages and pages with no dialogue for the characters.
Yeah.
But with Apples Never Fall, absolutely. I wrote it I wasn't casting as I went, but that's the difference now that I know some readers, even readers, are casting as they go. So in a way, that's just the way it is, and I'm not, it's a tiny price to pay, because obviously the adaptations have brought me so many more readers and have been huge perk of the job. But I do love the fact that normally the readers bring their own experiences to it. So it's not so much they're imagining it on the screen, that they've got their own imagination working. And that's what I love about writing, because it's my imagination and the reader's imagination coming together.
Is it strange for you as the creator of these characters to see them sort of reinterpreted?
Yeah, it's strange and surreal, and also wonderful. It has just made me realize that I think actors are sort of similar to authors in that they bring little parts of themselves and people they know, so that, you know, they bring their own little gestures. They create a new character. So that's why I think it's really important that as an author, I don't think it has to be a faithful adaptation, or it has to be completely as I saw it in my imagination. And it's just not possible, because every single reader who reads my books has a completely different interpretation. And I know that because readers come up to me at events sometimes and they start talking about something in my book, and they say something, they describe a character, and I think, no, you've got it wrong. And I know because I wrote it, but it's something that they've taken from their own life. They've added to it. So so the reader does that, and so does each actor. And so it becomes something quite different. And I love that.
I love it too. I never understand when people are upset when things are different in an adaptation. I'm like, you get the story again.
Yeah, exactly. And it's its own art form. It's
new spin, slightly different flavour, but still the same thing you love.
Yeah. And in a way, actually, to be honest, I enjoy the parts where I'm proud of the parts where I love the fact that little lines from Big Little Lies have become memes, you know, the tending to your grudges like little pets. I love the fact that that's a meme and that I wrote that. But I also love some of the subplots that I had nothing to do with because I could enjoy that as a viewer.
One of the things I love so much about your books, and which impresses me so much about your writing generally, is that you just you don't stay in your lane genre-wise. You kind of just like hop around and do. Any one of your books could be described as a drama or a mystery, a suspense. They're all funny. Like they're all just a little bit of everything blended in together. And I just wondered if you had to define your style, or if someone asks you, oh, I'm unfamiliar with your work somehow, I don't know where they've been living under a rock, but if someone were to say, what kind of books do you write, how would you answer that question?
I've always struggled with that question. So I don't, and people have often, that's the worst thing when you're at some event and it comes out that I'm an author, and there's that terrible line people say where they say, should I know you? How can you possibly answer that?
The answer is yes.
yes, you absolutely, of course, you should know me. How could you not know me? And then I don't know how to describe what I write. I know with my most recent books, they've been described as thrillers, and I always think I wish they weren't described as thrillers, because I think thriller readers are then I don't think they're thrilling enough for those sort of readers, and then they become impatient because they don't want to hear my characters, especially for Joy, little stories about how she met Stan and the little asides that I know some of my readers love. I think the readers who want a really fast-paced story get impatient and say, "Come on, get on. Where's the exciting part?" So I don't think domestic thriller is really right, but and I don't think they're suspenseful enough to be described as suspense either. So
They're just a wonderful amalgamation of all the good things.
I'll quote that, thank you. I'll say Sarah says in a wonderful amalgamation. And I know some reviewers have described, exactly what you say as a lovely compliment. I can remember some of my early reviews for the last anniversary. In that way, reviews sometimes get stuck in your head. This book can't decide what it wants to be. Is it a this? Is it a that? As if you have to stay in your lane. But as you say, I'm veering all over the place, as long as that's not upsetting the reader. So that's, which I do understand. If that's always that line I have to walk if I'm dealing with serious issues, and then I have humour as well. I don't want the reader to feel too off balance with that.
You balance those things so well, and I love the way you weave between the lanes. I think it's the greatest joy of a Liane Moriarty book, is that it's just going to be a little bit of everything and totally unexpected.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, you have my permission,
Yes,
Liane Moriarty.
yes.
That's needed.
Thank you. I take it.
We're running a little bit short on time, so I will just sort of finish up by asking, are you allowed to tell us what's up next for you? Is there anything that you're working on at the moment that you can talk about?
No, I've got nothing. I haven't. I mean, yes, you can ask, but no, I have. I don't have an idea. Nothing's, no sparks or anything yet. And I do find when I'm in this mode of talking about myself and about that, I couldn't finish talking to you and then sit down and write. I couldn't, because then I'm too conscious of myself. I'm too thinking of you saying you move between lanes. So then I'm thinking, oh, look at me moving between lanes. Yeah, and I'm amazing. I'm any genre. Because you can't write like that. You have to lose your sense of self and go into the story. So I have to stop talking about myself. And because there's also that self-loathing that comes after too much talking about myself, I need to get over all that, and then I'll write again.
Does seem to be a very different mode for a lot of authors. They've got publicity mode up to the lead up to a book. Yes. And then there's writing mode. Yes. Never the twain shall meet.
Exactly, because you're performing as a writer rather than actually being a writer.
Well, I always say, Liane, when I have the chance to talk to you, it's a bit like getting an audience with the Queen. I've very much enjoyed this audience with the Queen today. Thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to chat with you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, Sarah. I wish that this was the only thing I had to do. If I only had to hear it's like talking with the Queen, then that could be it, couldn't it?
I'm sure everyone feels that.
Done. No, they don't. I promise you, they don't.
They might just have a bit more cool and not say it out loud. I have no cool.
No, it's really lovely talking with you. Thank you.
And for everyone watching, you can order your copy of Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty, as well as all of her previously published titles at your local bookstore or online at Booktopia. Thanks for watching, and never stop reading.
Thanks, Sarah.